we're getting closer to the end of Penn State's season, I think.
You think?
They still have to play Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game.
Yep.
But if they do, there is a lot of conjecture out there about where Penn State will finish with regard to the 14 college playoff. I think the way some people look at it, they believe strongly that Penn State should be in as one of the 4 teams if they beat Wisconsin. But there's a lot of talk. You listen to the committee and how they talk, and maybe Penn State could be squeezed out. They might take a second Big Ten team. It might not be Penn State, or Washington of the Pac-12 could join. Assuming everyone wins, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and the 4th team could also be Washington.
Yep.
A lot of debate with this. How do you see this team? How do you see this thing shaking out if Penn State wins?
Yeah, it's a mess. I mean, first of all, I think they're probably where they should be in this week's rankings. But looking ahead to next week, there's so many options here, and the easiest one for the committee and for logic is Clemson and Washington both win, and that way you have undefeated, 1 loss, 1 loss, 1 loss, and what's the argument there?
Right.
Where it gets messy, of course, is if one of them loses.
Right.
Because then Penn State has Michigan as a roadblock. It will have one of those 2 teams, whichever one would lose, with 2 losses. If they would both somehow lose, then you really have a mess. And if Oklahoma State somehow beats Oklahoma State 9-2, they technically are 10.5 and 1.5 based on that Central Michigan field goal that should have counted snafu. I mean, it could get really hairy come Sunday morning. So I can't see a path for Penn State as we tape this on Wednesday, but if they get some losses to go their way, who knows?
Yeah, and if they would somehow win in impressive fashion against Wisconsin, that could influence the committee. Remember a couple of years ago, I think the only reason Ohio State got in was not only did they beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game, but they destroyed them. I think they scored 50 or more points
55.
in that game, and I mean that was enough to get them in the tournament, and they were tough. I would look at it this way: if Penn State beats Wisconsin, I think it's reasonable to say that given their improvement since the 2-2 start, they're one of the 4 best teams left playing. But that doesn't mean they're going to get in the tournament. I know it sounds like we're splitting hairs, but I'm with you. Looking at the roadblocks ahead of them, if Washington wins, I don't know how you take a second Big Ten team, and it looks like the committee has made their choice on what the first Big Ten team is going to be.
Right.
It's Ohio State, even though they didn't make it to the Big Ten title game. It's tough to accept, but I don't know that Penn State necessarily has their fate in their hands. Even if they win, they're going to need some help.